MakingAScene.org brings you When the Recording Carries the License, AI, Audio Provenance, and the Future of Artist-Owned Rights. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to explore a massive, totally game-changing technological shift that is fundamentally rewiring how music is owned, tracked, and licensed in the digital age. We're moving from a world where audiophiles are basically just anonymous digital drifters to a future where they're highly intelligent, self-identifying business assets.
Okay, let's just dive right into this by looking at what happens when a track leaves the studio. A modern recording's audio can travel the globe instantly, right? But its actual business identity? It's incredibly fragile. Think about it for a second. You can finish a master in Georgia, zap it over to Los Angeles, have it dropped into a video project in London, and suddenly discover it playing on a phone in Berlin, all within a few hours. The music travels beautifully. But what about the paperwork? The information that explains what that recording actually is as a business asset? Well, that is a whole different story entirely.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll quickly cover the fragile music file, persistent audio identity, and the artist's source of truth. Then, we'll look at AI licensing and revenue, why paperwork runs the show, and finally, empowering independent artists.
Let's start with Section 1, the fragile music file, lost in translation.
The core problem here is that while your audio survives endless handoffs, clipping, and transcoding, the PDFs, the emails, the metadata explaining who actually owns the thing, it almost always gets stripped away. Poof, gone. Imagine you put a do not train note at the very bottom of your website bio. Now, to a human reading it, that policy makes perfect sense. But an automated AI crawler just blindly scraping the web for training data, it literally only encounters the audio file. It's never going to see your website bio. Once your file leaves your hands, it gets renamed, copied, and converted over and over again. Standard embedded metadata just gets wiped by different platforms. So we urgently need a shift from human-readable policies to machine-readable policies. Structured data that software can actually exchange and understand at scale. Organizations like DDX, who set data standards for the music industry, they're already updating their systems so distributors can communicate AI training permissions. But that data still has to somehow stay connected to the audio file itself.
Moving on to Section 2, persistent audio identity, the indestructible digital key.
So how do we fix this massive metadata gap? Well, we use a framework called soft binding, which is supported by C2PA. That's the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. Think about companies like SonicOrigin. They're placing these totally inaudible watermarks directly into the recorded audio. And this is brilliant, because we don't need to shove an entire database or a 10-page contract inside a WAV file. That would be impossible to update if you ever changed publishers or cleared a new sample, right? Instead, this watermark or fingerprint acts as a persistent return address. It's literally a digital key. Even if your MP3 gets mangled, clipped down to 2 seconds, or entirely stripped of its text data, that invisible key survives. Authorized systems can read that key and just follow it straight back to your dynamic, ever-updating rights database.
Section 3, the artist's source of truth, pointing to reality.
Let's look at how this identity actually works out in the wild, making sure that you, the artist, remain completely in control. The crucial takeaway here is that the fingerprint is really just a bridge. MakingAScene.org uses this exact flow with their MAS Audio Fingerprint system. Let's walk through these steps real quick. First, the audio is out there. Maybe it's in a viral video or an AI platform, and that fingerprint is identified. Second, instead of handing that precious data over to some giant third-party corporate marketplace, that connection maps directly back to the FanPassport artist ecosystem, and that is a system the artist controls. Finally, step 3. The system retrieves the accurate sync and AI licensing data. You aren't permanently attaching your catalog's business identity to some random startup platform that might just disappear tomorrow. The audio points back to you.
All right, Section 4, AI licensing and revenue, from defense to offense. This brings us to a massive, and I mean massive, paradigm shift. We have got to stop viewing AI purely as a threat and start treating it as an actual piece of an artist's revenue infrastructure. Most of the public arguments about AI right now are strictly framed around defense, putting up a giant electronic no AI sticker on everything. And hey, for some artists, a complete opt-out is absolutely the right choice. But a persistent licensing identity can express so much more nuance than just no. It tells an AI crawler, hey, you can't use this for free, but here is exactly who you can contact and negotiate a paid license. You could allow broad catalog-level analysis, but strictly restrict vocal cloning. Or maybe you license stems for specific academic research. Instead of just blocking the door, your audio file actively guides legitimate users toward a licensing conversation, and ideally, a financial transaction. You're turning your track into a smart, working business asset.
Section 5. Paperwork runs the show, the foundation of truth.
Okay, before we get too lost in the glowing holograms and shiny new tech, we need a serious reality check about the totally unglamorous foundation of all this. I absolutely love this quote because it really grounds us. Technology can preserve a statement. It cannot make a false statement true. Watermarks, cryptographic signatures, machine-readable data, all of that is incredibly exciting. But the boring database sitting behind all of it, that is literally the most important part of the entire operation. If you tell a system you own 100% of a master, but actually scratch that, you signed half of it away last year, well, a persistent fingerprint doesn't fix that problem. It simply makes the wrong answer much, much easier to retrieve. The underlying business record absolutely has to be clean.
And this builds right into real-world applications like sync licensing for film and TV. Just look at this barrage of questions a music supervisor has to answer when they find a track they love for a huge scene. Who owns the master? Are there uncleared samples? If a supervisor working on a new hit TV show has a crazy tight deadline and they have to reconstruct your chain of ownership across 6 chaotic emails, 2 Dropbox folders, and an unresponsive co-writer, yeah, you are going to lose that placement to someone whose track can be cleared in 20 minutes flat. A persistent audio identity is completely useless if the answers to these fundamental questions aren't totally organized and accurate right at the source.
Section 6. Empowering Independent Artists, the Clean Catalog Advantage.
This leads us to the climax of this whole explainer, where clean, independent rights ownership transforms from this daunting chore into a massive competitive advantage. For decades, independent artists felt totally disadvantaged because they didn't have that massive major label infrastructure behind them. But in a world driven by machine-readable rights and automated systems, the script is totally flipping. Major catalogs are notoriously fragmented. We're talking multiple layers of ownership, complex publishing splits across different territories, which ultimately means very, very slow clearance. On the flip side, an independent artist who clearly controls both their master and their publishing, they offer one-stop clearance. When your independent catalog is clean and well-managed, that simplicity becomes incredibly attractive to music supervisors and legitimate AI companies who need fast, safe, and reliable licensing. Your independence is literally your greatest superpower here.
And to make all this work, we really have to rethink decentralization. Let's be real. True decentralization isn't just some flashy blockchain buzzword to throw around at parties. What it actually means in practice is that if a platform or a marketplace completely disappears tomorrow, goes totally bankrupt, you still own your masters, your contracts, and your core rights records. Your entire business shouldn't be trapped inside a single proprietary dashboard. The fingerprint in your audio should be a connection to your ecosystem, not a dependency on some tech company's server. That is exactly what keeps the system artist first.
So, I leave you with this one final question to think about. Will your next music file be just a fragile piece of audio or a persistent, working business asset? We are entering an era where music carries not just its sound, but its identity, its ownership, and a clear, indestructible path straight back to you, the creator. The technology is here, the standards are being written right now, and the opportunity is entirely yours. Make sure you check out the other great articles and resources on makingascene.org, the place the indie artist goes to build the new music industry.